This month, Russia suffers one of its most devastating blows since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. Not from tanks or missiles, but from something far colder and frankly scarier than a submarine at periscope depth: coordinated bureaucracy. Across the Atlantic and back again, NATO member states align political will, financial firepower, and maritime muscle into a single relentless pressure system. The target is a ghost armada, Russia's so-called shadow fleet of aging oil tankers that has morphed into the Kremlin's lifeline. The message from a united alliance is simple: the more you hide in the grey zones, the brighter we turn the floodlights. This is modern warfare without the muzzle flash. An alliance-scale campaign that bleeds a war machine at the cash register before it can roar on the battlefield. And yes, the most dangerous weapon today might be a spreadsheet, backed by patrol aircraft. NATO is, at its core, a security pact, not a sanctions body, and yet its strength is precisely that it can synchronize the pieces that do have direct economic tools. When the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, European members and Turkey move in concert, the effect is NATO-sized, even if the legal levers are national or EU-based. Intelligence sharing, common operating pictures, maritime patrols, cyber and financial intelligence, and rapid policy messaging create the world's most formidable enforcement network. One capital tweaks rules on shipping insurance, another targets shell companies that reflag tankers, a third amplifies aerial and satellite monitoring over critical sea lanes. Individually, these steps are irritating. Combined, they're constricting, like watching a boa tighten one slow breath at a time. Let's be clear, NATO as an institution doesn't sign sanctions orders, but NATO members do, often together and increasingly in lockstep when it comes to the shadow fleet. Think of it as a two-layer play. The political, military layer is NATO: surveillance, deterrence, maritime presence, information fusion. The economic, legal layer is executed by member governments and partners: price caps, blacklists, finance restrictions, export controls. The magic happens where those layers meet. A suspicious ship goes dark in the Kattegat, maritime patrol aircraft cue satellites, which cue coast guards, which cue finance ministries that have fresh intel on the shell companies involved. That coordination turns loopholes into cul-de-sacs. Russia's shadow fleet grows out of necessity. When sanctions and price caps bite, Moscow doesn't stop shipping, it shapeshifts. Old tankers are bought on the cheap, reflagged under jurisdictions with light touch oversight, and renamed often enough to confuse an insurance adjuster with a photographic memory. The automatic identification system, the ship's global "I'm here" beacon, goes mysteriously dark at convenient moments. Ship-to-ship transfers happen in open waters. Paper trails are laundered via intermediary companies that look like they were named by keyboard smashing. Trans-Global Maritime Solutions International Commercial LLC. It's all legal, until it's not. And even when it is, it can be made very, very expensive. For the Kremlin, oil exports are oxygen. Even a few dollars shaved off per barrel, multiplied by millions of barrels per day, adds up to daily hemorrhaging. When discounts deepen, insurance gets pricier, routes lengthen, and older ships need more maintenance. The shadow fleet stops looking like a cute workaround and starts looking like a cash incinerator. If you've ever tried to save money by buying the cheapest printer and then stared in horror at the price of ink cartridges, that's Russia with old tankers. The alliance's comparative advantage is coordination. Intelligence fusion centers stitch together satellite feeds, AIS data anomalies, thermal imagery, port records, and even wake pattern analytics to label dark fleet activity in near real time. Maritime patrol aircraft and drones extend visibility over choke points, from the GI-UK gap to the Bosporus approaches. Coast guards and navies of member states run joint patrols, boardings, and safety checks. Meanwhile, the economic side of the house, executed by member governments, tightens the screws. Insurers are told, if your paperwork touches sanctioned cargo, you're out. Banks here, enjoy secondary sanctions? No? Then maybe don't clear that payment. Flag registries get calls they don't want to return. The message cascades down the chain of enablers. until even shadowy operators realize they're now spending more time filling out forms than moving oil. There's precedent for this kind of orchestration. Cross-Atlantic task forces that coordinate asset seizures and sanction enforcement already exist. In the maritime domain, multinational exercises stress test how fast intelligence can move from satellite to boarding ladder. Regional formats in the Nordics and Baltics focus on protecting seabed cables and pipelines, exactly the infrastructure that both requires and provides the surveillance backbone for catching suspicious tankers. When member states synchronize these efforts with legal moves, adding specific ships, shell companies, and service providers to blacklists, the result is a net that's both wide and fine. Here's the backbone of the story. This isn't a British, American, or EU-only effort. It's a pan-NATO one, with each capital picking the lever it can pull the hardest. Some members focus on legal architecture and price caps, others bring space assets, maritime patrols, or cyber tools. Others pressure insurers and registries. Turkey controls a historic maritime gateway. Canada and Norway contribute energy market resilience that blunts shocks. The cumulative effect is to push the Kremlin into a narrower, pricier corridor, where every barrel costs more to move, every payment is riskier to process, and every shortcut is more likely to be flagged by an algorithm with no sense of humor. The villains in the Shadow Fleet saga hate artificial intelligence for the same reason toddlers hate baby gates. You can't just slip through anymore. Modern maritime AI looks for patterns humans miss, synchronized AIS blackouts, impossible speeds between reported positions, wake signatures that don't match the claimed ship class, cargo volumes that don't reconcile with port logs, and financial flows that scream, "This is definitely not Malaysian oil." As the data lake grows, the false positive rate shrinks, and spoofing becomes a digital version of putting on a fake mustache and hoping no one notices. Someone, somewhere will notice. Enforcement works best where the ocean funnels ships into predictable lanes. The GI-UK gap gates Atlantic traffic, the Danish Straits concentrate Baltic flow, the Turkish Straits bottleneck access between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. The English Channel and the North Sea are basically maritime turnstiles. NATO members surround these choke points, and that geography is priceless. Add airborne radar, satellites, and Coast Guard inspectors with clipboards that could double as medieval weapons, and the probability of a routine safety inspection goes up exactly where it hurts evasive operators most. Price caps only work if they move, and if enforcement keeps the cap from becoming a polite suggestion. When member governments coordinate to adjust ceilings in step with market conditions and pair those moves with tighter financing and service bans, traders who thought they found a profitable gap discover they've actually walked into a sliding door. The Kremlin can try to reroute oil to Asia and offer bigger discounts, but longer voyages tie up ships, increase costs, and invite more inspections along the way. It's like trying to beat surge pricing by taking 4 different rideshares and a scooter. Technically possible, financially silly. Imagine a scenario where NATO members decide to treat Shadow Fleet evasion not as a series of isolated violations, but as a strategic threat that demands an alliance-level response. You'd see a shared watch floor for maritime anomalies. You'd see recurring multinational patrols cued by shared AI alerts, stopping not just the obvious rust buckets, but the clean ships that just happened to handle the cargo 3 transfers ago. You'd see synchronized announcements. On Monday, insurers get new guidance. Tuesday, flag registries issue deregistrations. Wednesday, banks update their risk models. Thursday, Coast Guards increase safety inspections at key anchorages. Friday, prosecutors unseal indictments against the intermediaries who move money and paperwork for the network. Week 2 repeats with fresh targets. The grey market relies on 3 pillars: opacity, speed, and plausible deniability. Alliance coordination attacks all 3. Opacity? Gone when space-based sensors, aerial patrols, and port records are merged in near real time. Speed? Slowed by inspections, reroutings, and insurance delays. Plausible deniability? Eroded when patterns tie the same brokers, shell companies, and service providers to multiple incidents. Profit margins that looked fat under light enforcement get razor thin when every leg of the journey is a little bit longer. Every service a little bit pricier, every routine stop a little more routine. Even before perfect enforcement, Russia feels the budget crunch. Military spending soars, non-defense sectors wither, skilled labor is scarce, capital is tied up in long supply chains, refineries and pipelines close or get hit, Shipyards struggle for parts. Running a war on a discount is like trying to host a 5-star dinner with supermarket coupons. You can cobble something together, but you're not feeding an army. The more the alliance raises costs at sea, the more the Kremlin must cannibalize its economy on land. Russian-aligned operators try clever things. Double transponders, GPS spoofing, identity swaps mid-voyage, flag hopping faster than a Eurovision voting board. But most of these tricks leave fingerprints. 2 beacons from one hull, track histories that make no hydrodynamic sense, insurance certificates that don't match updated registries, financial flows that trip compliance alarms. The more complicated the ruse, the more data it creates, and the more opportunities for allied systems to stitch together the story. It's the maritime equivalent of lying to your parents and forgetting which lie you used last week. Eventually, someone asks, if you were at your friend's house, why does her mom's Instagram show you were on a boat? For all the tech, this is still about people. Coast Guard crews knock on hulls at 3 a.m. Analysts fuse a dozen feeds while living on caffeine and gallows humor. Prosecutors assemble boring-looking but devastating cases. Finance and foreign ministries coordinate press lines so traders feel the chill before the formal order lands. Navies and air forces provide the backdrop that makes everyone else feel bold. The alliance's comparative advantage is trust, built over decades. When a small member state finds something odd off its coast, a major ally takes the call and acts. Cutting into Shadow Fleet revenues doesn't just reduce Russia's cash, it complicates logistics, degrades readiness, and shortens the war's financial endurance. Artillery shells are expensive. Missiles are very expensive. Replacing tanks and aircraft is ruinously expensive. A united transatlantic campaign that makes every barrel harder to move and every dollar harder to clear translates into fewer salvos, fewer rotations, and fewer options. Deterrence isn't just carriers in the ocean, it's compliance officers in glass towers quietly saying no. A tanker approaching a European anchorage gets a safety inspection. Inspectors find paperwork referencing a service provider recently blacklisted by multiple member states. Insurance is deemed invalid. The ship diverts, burning time and money. Another vessel tries a ship-to-ship transfer near a known hotspot. A patrol aircraft buzzes low, cameras rolling. The footage feeds into a shared database. The next port denies entry pending clarification. A major bank receives wire instructions that don't align with new risk rules tied to certain corridors. The transaction is paused. The cargo's buyer demands a bigger discount because hassle. Multiply these scenes by dozens per week and watch the cash flow thin out. Because NATO isn't a sanctions-issuing body, some of this is what if NATO members responded as one, rather than what NATO just did. That's by design. The point of this analysis is to show how a collective security alliance, acting through its members, can execute economic warfare with the same professionalism it brings to air policing or naval task groups. The line between reality and scenario is simple. Real joint patrols, real intelligence fusion, real price caps, real blacklists. Already happening. The hypothetical is the degree of synchronization and the pace. What it looks like when capitals decide that Shadow Fleet evasion is not a nuisance, but a strategic front to be won. If alliance coordination continues to ratchet up, the Shadow Fleet faces a business model collapse. Older ships are retired faster than replacements arrive. Insurance dries up. The cost of capital for even grey area traders spikes. Asian buyers, sensing leverage, demand deeper discounts. The remaining routes get longer and riskier. Eventually, only the most politically protected flows survive, and even those trickle, not roar. That doesn't end a war by itself, but it shortens Moscow's horizon, narrows its choices, and increases the price of every bad decision. Today's NATO includes allies on both sides of the Atlantic, from the Arctic to the Mediterranean. That breadth is the point. Surveillance in the north, interdiction in the straits, legal pressure from finance hubs, energy resilience from producers, and political unity at the top. When the alliance acts collectively through its members, it moves markets, not just ships. Somewhere, a Shadow Fleet manager is explaining to his boss why the tanker Chill Dolphin is now the serious Albatross, and how that definitely makes the paperwork legitimate. An insurance underwriter has developed a sixth sense for emails sent at 2:59 a.m. from companies that were founded yesterday. A compliance officer just told a trader, "No, we cannot accept a letter of credit from Bank of Totally Real Islands." And an analyst looking at a heat signature over the North Sea mutters, "Buddy, if you're going to turn off AIS, maybe don't also post your deck selfie with geotags." As policy packages accumulate and technology keeps improving, the system tilts toward enforcement. Each new measure doesn't replace the last, it layers on top, compounding the friction for those trying to cheat. Operators adapt, but their adaptations raise costs, slow deliveries, and leave trails. Ships age, spare parts get harder to source, financing windows narrow, inspections get sharper because the data is richer, and the alliance grows more comfortable using its full toolkit, not to fight a tanker war, but to wage a campaign of strategic inconvenience, so relentless that it becomes decisive. Economic warfare is about time and tempo. If Russia cannot convert barrels into battalions quickly and profitably, its war machine loses rhythm. Mobilizations grow more expensive, rotations take longer, repair queues stretch, Allied support to Ukraine, paired with Allied pressure at sea and in finance, becomes a vice. One jaw feeds Kyiv, the other starves Moscow. That's how deterrence and compellence meet in the middle, without a shot fired in anger, but with plenty of noise in accounting departments. This isn't just a regional story. Every maritime nation has a stake in honest shipping lanes, safe straits, and a global trading system that doesn't reward deception. When an alliance can defend both borders and balance sheets, it raises the cost of aggression everywhere. Pirates hate frigates, smugglers hate graphs. The combination is potent. The cameras will linger on jets and ships because they look cool and they matter. But the unseen heroes of this chapter are the patrols that catch one suspicious transfer, the lawyers who write one airtight clause, the analysts who flag one pattern, and the diplomats who line up 10 capitals behind one policy. Piece by piece, day by day, those actions drain the lifeblood from a war effort that counts on the world looking away. NATO's message is the opposite. We're watching, we're coordinating, we're patient, and we're very, very good at paperwork. If you want more deep dives into how alliances fight 21st century wars without firing a shot, hit subscribe. We'll keep tracking the ships, the sanctions, the satellites, and the spreadsheets, because sometimes the pen really is mightier than the sword, especially when it's signing an enforcement order.